Welcome to our interview series with WellNest Global and international holistic experts, Consilience, Exploring New Ways of Thriving. You can find the series on our YouTube channel at WellNest Global, and I'm Valarie Angle Roberts, your hostess today. And our intention with this program is to empower you, our audience, our viewers, with tools, wisdom, and resources to assist you on your journey of thriving in life. So whether that means you're looking for peace of mind, satisfaction, success in your career, we would like to help introduce you to these experts that can help you find your way. So today we have an awesome guest coming to us from Johannesburg, Michael Sissison. Did I say that right, Michael?
You got that 100%. Yes, Sissison.
Sissison.
Yeah.
It's a lot of S's, but I like it. It's really unique. And so, Michael, thank you so much for being here with us today. We really appreciate you taking time. It's the end of your workday there, and so we know you're winding down. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Valarie, and thank you for the warm welcome. You are right. We are winding down. I think it's 11 o'clock your side, 5 o'clock my side here. And I'm coming off my work, a work day where my work is essentially, I'm a clinical psychologist and a life transition coach. And the two actually run quite nicely together. I'm faced with people who come with these transitions, sometimes beautiful moments in their lives, sometimes not so beautiful moments, times of change, times of stress, progression, I think, from one life phase into another. So you might be leaving a school, going to university. You might be leaving your single life to get married. You might be undergoing a more tragic change around death and loss, which then presents, in my practice as a clinical psychologist. Life transitions, though, also can relate to not just sort of early stages in our lives, but certainly the older stages when we're about to retire, about to take on something new and fresh. Sometimes, I suppose, with misconceptions. The idea really being, are you able to leave behind what you have known and take some step forward into something new, which may be challenging to you, which may be daunting, which may be a bit scary, but things that you would like to, I suppose, take on rather than withdraw, to rather stay in life as best you can. We're all faced with difficulties and challenges which can take us down sort of rocky roads then filled with, you can talk about anxiety, facing the unknown, new challenges, a child leaving home, and the other things around, I suppose, change and uncertainty, which we did face in COVID, that was highlighted. Change, uncertainty, death, another thing that crosses my path quite often. But more specifically, I suppose, I have some interest, more specialized interest in retirement, where through talking to people who've been at the top of their game, holding positions of power and status, suddenly they're left in an unstructured life, which in the beginning might sound great. I can go to the beach when I like to, I can play golf when I like, but it means you have to adjust though. And without that structure and sense of purpose and meaning, people get lost. They get confused. There are ambivalent feelings that come through. We all want some kind of clarity, but I believe, that something about the unknown and ambivalence is something that we need, and that is part of our human being, our human heritage as such. So, to move beyond that state of sometimes, I suppose, being stuck, feeling a bit stagnant in one's life, and trying to generate something that excites one, that one feels passionate about, that one can kind of go towards rather than lean away from, to move into it, with certainly some positivity, but also some awareness of what can challenge you along the way. And the key word, I think, is probably awareness. people to create awareness in relation to their own sense of self, in relation to other people, in relation to other things, and things that a relationship doesn't have to mean people or pets. It can mean relationships to money, relationships to sport, relationships to one's body, which I think is played down quite a lot. There is more of an awareness about the body now. But, how do we kind of view ourselves? What do we mirror back to ourselves about our body, about the language that we use to express what we think and feel? That is an interest of mine, how we use language to step into the world or to step back from. We often get into this kind of inner critical gaze. I'm not clever enough. I can't do this. I'm not worth much. And if that's the language that we bring into the world, people are going to pick up on that, and they're going to either be a bit wary of you. And I'm certainly not saying that we're always going to be positive, but just an awareness of the language and how we kind of story our own lives. What is the story behind what people present in my work, for example? So someone might present with a whole lot of symptomatology around depression or anxiety. But I'm, as a psychologist and certainly as a coach, far more interested in what lies behind that story. What are the doors that have been closed in a person's life? What are the things that have happened that have contributed to that sense of forlornness, despair, and no sense of moving forward, into the world with some hope and some faith. And I think one of the things that does happen, given that sometimes bad things do befall us, we tend to take that, we either over-personalize, that's a tendency certainly with people who are more anxious, over-personalize, over-catastrophize things, without perhaps seeing, that there may be life or a chink of light beyond what we actually are grappling with. But the way to do that, of course, is to reach out, to communicate, you can reach out to friends. But often I find, people have spoken to friends and they haven't felt that they've been met or seen or heard. And then they come to me, in a more, let's say, professional role. But the word professional, in the way that I work, relationship is very, very important. And it's an equal relationship. It's not so much the old idea of the hierarchy. Here sits the expert and you're going to tell me exactly how to lead my life. It doesn't work like that. It's a mutual growth and development between myself and the person who's talking to me, either in my rooms, face to face, or online. That's the primary focus. What's happening between the two of us? What are some of the things that have been helpful, things that perhaps haven't been so good? But to develop that relationship and to communicate with people. Yeah. And whether that's as an individual or as a couple. I do sometimes do couples work as well. So that whole thing about the communication and to fill in the gaps. How often do I see people who are raging at each other when in fact things haven't been clearly stated, clearly communicated, and it has created then this kind of, call it disequilibrium in a relationship between two people, where people feel it's a bit of a seesaw. I'm doing too much. He or she's not doing enough. And people become disgruntled, and then the challenge is, are we able to move into those difficult areas, whether again as a couple or as an individual? What can you take from that? What do you learn from it? And how can we make your relationship to yourself, to others, I think, feel more fulfilled and consolidated? There is a lot, I think, about consolidation, where we can explore things, go down different avenues of a person's life, and of course, get in touch with feeling. That's the key thing, I think, in psychology. What is the feeling that drives you to become very angry, that makes you sad, that informs, I suppose, an ambivalence, that I spoke about briefly earlier? Because we don't want to feel constantly confused and perhaps lost, and that we've missed things in our lives, or that people have missed seeing us. We don't want that. We, from a young person, from a young child's perspective, young child wants to be seen, heard, validated. And that's something that we carry into our adult lives as well. We don't want to go into relationships where we're made to feel like a child again, or that we're being spoken down to. We want to feel that there's been progression in our lives, and hopefully more positive, I suppose, movement and development than not. So those are some of the, very briefly, some of the things that concern me, I suppose, as a psychologist, as a psychotherapist, and as a transition coach. How we negotiate our way through sometimes difficult journeys, and sometimes challenges that have felt just overwhelming, that have resulted then in being overly anxious, a threat about the future, living in dread as well, closing down, not socializing. And I think that was also highlighted with COVID. And it still is, people are still recovering, getting out. But the stories I've heard of people who have withdrawn, isolated themselves, sort of lost trust in the world. But they are bouncing back. I believe a lot in that, in the human resilience, the human spirit. So, yeah.
Okay,
Those are some of the
hearing
highlights.
A lot of, regardless of what type of transition you're going through in your life, those things resonate, right? That finding who you are, your sense of self. You mentioned that a couple of different times when you were talking, coming back to that sense of self and your feelings. Like, how am I connected with this feeling? Because I know a lot of times I hear from people around me kind of an overwhelm in life, because there's so much sensory overload, I guess, in the world today. There's so much distraction, so much to look at, so much to hear, endless entertainment, and maybe a sense of trying to fit in certain places or in ways. But if you don't have that strong sense of identity and self and connectedness with your feelings, when you have a transition, that's going to make that a lot more stressful, right?
It certainly will. Yeah. I mean, fundamentally, that sense of self, who you are, what you're about, what your boundaries are, what drives you, what excites you. And I think you've probably heard this a lot anyway, but the capacity to just say no, and feel okay with yourself. Saying no. And then I think I wanted to also pick up on the sense of belonging. You spoke about fitting in. So the 16, 17, 18-year-old, they very much want to, with the in-group, the in-crowd, perhaps the early 20s as well. And then we start moving into areas, I think, in our 30s, where we've got a better sense of who we are, this kind of social persona. There is a place for it. There's definitely a place for persona. But the social persona, I think, as we get older, is not as needed or as urgent, as for the younger person. So if you know yourself reasonably well, you've traveled a bit inside yourself, you've spoken to people, and you're aware of what it is that drives you, what excites you, then you're going to be able to set boundaries, I think, a bit more easily than the person who's overly accommodating, always trying to please, seeking validation, and knows, I suppose, when to choose their battles and when not to. But I do want to say the thing about different potentialities. I suppose, when we're, for example, if we have a child, so I have the potential, my fathering instinct, I suppose, is then brought out more. I have the potential to be a good father. If I didn't have a child, I wouldn't know what it was about. Then let's say at 18, 20 years later, your child leaves home. Then you've got to deal with, okay, now I'm back in the relationship. You've got to readjust again. There's always those pulls and pushes, and how we change, that people change with different circumstances that are thrown at them, via life's vagaries and challenges that we are faced with.
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of having someone to talk to, a coach, a therapist, a mentor, a guide. I just feel like, people need that. We need that in our world. And since we don't live in sort of a tribal setting necessarily anymore, most of us, we don't necessarily know where to turn. So having you on today, allowing you to share what it is that you can support people with, and giving our audience an option and an understanding that if they're going through a transition, which we're all going to experience over and over in our life, that it's safe and it's beneficial to have someone like yourself guide them through that, figure it out, work through the communication, the emotion, and kind of figure out why am I intent on people pleasing all the time, or why am I always letting people cross my boundaries and never saying no, and just kind of figuring that out, and then finding that place on the other end, like you said, where you can find your passion and what you're going to look forward to next as you transition away from one thing and into another. So really valuable support there. And I hope that that message is clear today with the audience, that that they could reach out to you. So again, tell us again how they can find you. You've got a website, right?
I've got a website, yeah. It's michael@sissison.com. 4 S's, SISSISON, michael@sissison.com. I do take emails as well. That's the website, michaelsissison.com. The email address, michael@sissison.com. So those are the main avenues that people can contact me on. I am moving more into the social media realm. I'm producing a few videos on YouTube, around, I think, areas of interest both to me and to people generally. So, so those videos, I know someone's helping me put them up and get them organized. But those are the two main, the website and the email address, the main ways to get hold of me. And I do agree with you, this thing about the community, because we are individuals in this huge world, and sometimes we break down, the channels break down, we get lost, we get isolated. So a community, and a community in your setting, I think this is absolutely essential. The WellNest Global interview series, I think it's a fantastic idea.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we're thrilled to be able to introduce viewers to experts and professionals, because you don't know till you know, right? You don't know what's available to you and what's out there and what it looks like. So I feel like a lot of people might have seen know a friend who talks to a psychotherapist or a coach, or it's crossed their mind, but they're just not sure if it's for them. And so being able just to have a conversation with you today, Michael, and letting you talk a little bit about what you're passionate about can help people see how supportive that can be, in their life. So I am so grateful to you for being here, and appreciate you and your time. And for those of you who are watching, all of this, the ways to get in touch with Michael, we will have in the description below, so you can find it. If you're out taking a walk right now while you're listening, don't fret. we'll have that there for you. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't lose the channel or this conversation. And you've liked the video, so it stays in your queue and you can come back and get all that information in the description. So thank you again, Michael, for being here. And thank you to our viewers for listening in today. We hope this has been valuable for you and that you will go over to Michael's website at Michael Sissison. I'm trying to say it as beautifully as you do.
Sissison. Sissison. 4 S's.
Michael
4
Sissison.
S's. Yes.
I want to make it French or something. I don't know.
It is French. It's French, and now it's an anglicized. It's an anglicized French name. Yeah, it is.
Well, my intuition was onto something there.
yeah.
Okay. So check out his website, and we'll put the email in there as well if you want to reach out. And everyone have a great week, and we will see you back here next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Valarie. See you. Bye-bye. Ciao.